For the last number of months, one of the main criticisms of Joe Biden has been high gas prices, so I want to take a look at that issue and break down the facts. So I sincerely ask anyone who's been screaming, Joe Biden is the reason for high gas prices, please keep watching, because I'm not here to call anybody dumb or make fun of you for being wrong. I just honestly want us all to be aware of what the facts are. Anytime I'm defending Joe Biden, I like to specify that I criticize him plenty, and there is plenty to criticize him about. I just don't know why people feel the need, and I wish they wouldn't attack him for things that aren't grounded in reality. I say that because otherwise people will say, oh, you're just kissing Joe Biden's booty. No, the only booty that I kiss is that of the facts. So cringy. Starting at a very preliminary and basic level, have gas prices risen under Joe Biden? Yes. Are they at near record levels and causing serious pain to average Americans? Yes. So we're all on the same page so far. Okay, but now I think that to blame somebody for something that has happened, you have to be able to explain what they actively did that caused it or what they didn't do that allowed it to happen. I think that's so important. Also, it would be nice if people criticizing him could have a basic understanding of what affects gas prices. So this is all summed up really nicely in a CBS article that came out, and I'll link it in the description. I'm gonna read parts of it, but I definitely encourage you to read the entire thing and also send it to any family and friends who have a misunderstanding about this issue, because it really effectively lays out what the facts are. So the big question that we're trying to answer is what is causing gas prices to rise at such an alarming rate? And the way that this article breaks it down is into three main components. It's post-pandemic production of gas, cuts to oil production, and US sanctions on Russia. So first, whenever the pandemic started, oil production dramatically dropped. I mean, just think about your personal life. Were you driving as much or flying on planes? Quote, that sharp decline in demand caused gas prices to plunge to an average of $1.94 per gallon in April 2020. But then people began living their life a little bit more normally, getting back out there, traveling more, and prices naturally began rising again because demand was going up. And again, this, when the prices started rising, was under Trump. And again, it's completely natural. I mean, demand was way down, it went back up, prices started rising. Quote, by March 2021, the average per gallon price for gas stood at $2.82, an increase of 45% from its pandemic low. But instead of what happens all the time where there's a little dip in demand, so then prices go down, then it goes back up, prices go back up, there was also an unusual supply situation. Quote, when demand for gas and oil plunged during the pandemic, OPEC and oil producing nations such as Russia cut production, slashing it by an unprecedented 10 million barrels. To put that in perspective, that represents 10% of the global supply. But as the global economy recovered from the pandemic, OPEC was slow to ramp up production. Dee Haan said, quote, we're nearing pre-COVID levels for consumption, but production is still lagging. OPEC didn't start increasing production until July 2021. They were already too late. They were severely behind the curve. So the pandemic caused something that rarely ever happens. In a snap of a finger, demand just went boom. And so that caused oil producers to way scale back how much they were putting out. Then all of a sudden, demand goes back up, supply chains aren't able to catch up. And so at the same time, you have high demand, low supply, which Econ 101 tells us that's gonna raise prices. And as a side note, this is also causing a lot of the inflation in other industries. The pandemic caused the demand to go way down, and then once it shot back up, a lot of these supply chains just aren't catching up. So part of that is unintentional, but then some of it is deliberate. OPEC, which is an organization of oil producing countries, is intentionally withholding oil. Quote, OPEC Plus, for its part, has been withholding millions of barrels a day in potential oil production from the markets. And the reason that I found for why they're doing this is to make up a lot of the profits that they lost during the pandemic. But it's terrible because they're artificially increasing the price of oil to make themselves more money when they could be putting out more supply. Okay, so far we have the natural rise in prices because of the demand that's coming back after the pandemic low. We have intensified rises as production is trying to catch up, but then also OPEC is withholding. And then finally, the last element of this is Russian sanctions. So of course, in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the United States has banned all imports of Russian oil and gas. Quote, and against the backdrop of steadily rising prices, Russia's war in Ukraine has caused a rapid 20% plus spike in oil and gas prices in mere weeks. So when you take an honest look at all three of those factors that we just laid out, no wonder prices are so high. I mean, almost everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. And that's why we're seeing these brutal costs. So now to address a couple myths directly, one of the things people say is that the reason prices are so high is Biden has cut back on oil and gas production for the climate's sake. Quote, but experts say the US is producing more oil now than it was in 2020 prior to Mr. Biden's inauguration. Okay, so oil and gas production is higher than when Biden got in office, so clearly he's not cutting way back on our production. And another myth that I hear so much is that because Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, that also is causing prices to rise. Quote, the pipeline shutdown has absolutely nothing to do with gas prices, said Patrick D. Hahn, head of petroleum analysis for GasBuddy. Prices are higher because production has lagged behind, not because there isn't enough pipeline capacity. There is. So yeah, the pipeline is for transporting oil, not producing oil. And as he points out there's plenty of pipeline capacity that isn't being maximized because of the production issues. So canceling that one pipeline couldn't be affecting gas prices. So there we go. Moral of the story, please stop falling for these easily debunked talking points. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can criticize Biden about quite a few things, but this just isn't one of them. Sometimes, especially after a pandemic, bad economic things just happen, and it's not always due to whoever was in charge at that given point in time. And I would apply that to Trump as well. It's not his fault that the economy crashed. We had a once in 100-year pandemic come in. Of course, that's going to cause an economic downturn. Now, I think he could have handled that downturn better, but you can't just blame everything that's happening on whoever's president at the time. You have to look at if they had a hand in causing whatever that issue is. So do your research and just be mindful. If somebody's job is to largely criticize the other side, and then they give you a really simple to understand thing that you can be mad about, just do a quick fact check and make sure you're not getting mad for no reason. Here's what else you need to know today. Ginni Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, was revealed to have texted Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in the weeks leading up to January 6th, imploring him to overturn the election. Joe Manchin comes out in support of Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation to the Supreme Court, which makes it nearly inevitable that she will get the position, which is awesome. Biden visits American soldiers stationed near the Polish-Ukrainian border and plans to meet with Ukrainian refugees. And finally, Madeleine Albright, the first woman to serve as Secretary of State, dies at the age of 84. Be well, everybody.